It was a warm Thursday afternoon in downtown Atlanta, the kind of day when the streets buzzed with business travelers and tourists rushing in and out of tall glass buildings. Inside the Magnolia Grand Hotel, the air smelled of lemon polish and expensive perfume. The chandeliers glowed, and the floor shone like still water. And then there was Andre Miles, standing quietly by the lobby fountain, holding an old leather briefcase. He looked out of place. His clothes were clean but modest, worn jeans, a simple polo, shoes that had seen better days. He wasn't there to check in, and he wasn't meeting anyone at the bar. He was just waiting. The receptionist eyed him suspiciously. Her name tag read Kendra, and she leaned over the counter, whispering something to the bellboy. Within minutes, 2 hotel security guards began to approach, tall, bulky men with that practiced authority in their stride. "Excuse me, sir," one of them said firmly. "Guests only are allowed past the front desk." Andre turned, calm and polite. "I'm actually waiting for someone," he said. "Aha," the other guard replied, glancing him up and down. "You mind telling us who that someone is?" Before Andre could answer, Kendra chimed in. "He's been standing there for almost 15 minutes, she said. "We've got a high-profile event upstairs today. We can't have people loitering." Andre sighed softly, as if he'd been through this before. "Ma'am," he said, "I promise you, I'm not here to cause trouble. I was invited." But the guards didn't care about promises. One of them took a step forward, hand on his walkie-talkie. "Sir, I'm gonna need to see some ID." Andre hesitated. There was a quiet dignity in his voice when he replied, "Are you sure you want to do that?" The guard scoffed. "Oh, I'm sure." Andre reached slowly into his pocket, pulled out a slim black wallet, and flipped it open. Inside was a sleek federal ID card, the kind that made even the most confident men take a step back. The guard froze mid-breath. His tone shifted instantly. "Wait, sir, I'm sorry. I didn't realize." Kendra leaned over the counter, squinting. "What is it?" she whispered. The guard swallowed hard. "It's Secret Service." Andre quietly slid the ID back into his wallet and looked around the now silent lobby. The energy had changed, from suspicion to shock. The same people who'd been watching him like he didn't belong were now whispering, unsure what to do. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just said calmly, "I told you I was invited." And with that, he walked toward the elevator, the guards parting like doors before him. Upstairs, on the 14th floor, a private conference was underway. Executives, senators, and investors gathered for a closed-door meeting on national security initiatives. They were waiting for one final guest. When Andre stepped off the elevator, the room fell silent again, but this time, out of respect. A tall man in a navy suit greeted him. "Agent Miles, glad you could make it," he said, shaking his hand. "We were just reviewing your field report." Downstairs, the same receptionist who had nearly called the police was still staring at the elevator, her face pale with disbelief. She had no idea that the man she tried to remove wasn't just a guest. He was the lead investigator on a classified security operation that involved the very people upstairs. Upstairs in the Magnolia Grand's glass-walled conference room, Andre Miles sat quietly at the far end of the table. Around him, sharply dressed men and women tapped on laptops, whispered into phones, and discussed numbers that could change lives. He didn't say much, he rarely did, but everyone knew he was the reason this meeting was even happening. The projector light washed over his face as the screen displayed bold words, "Operation Greyline, Domestic Cybersecurity Expansion Proposal." Andre leaned back, his mind drifting for a moment, not to the mission at hand but to the road that had brought him here, the long, winding one few people knew existed. 3 years ago, Andre wasn't in a suit or a secure meeting room. He was under a car in a small garage on the south side of Atlanta, the kind of place where the radio never stopped playing and the scent of motor oil clung to your clothes. He ran Miles Auto Repair, a modest shop passed down from his father. Business was steady, but life was simple, maybe too simple for a man like him. At night, After closing, Andre would sit in the back office surrounded by old computers and circuit boards. Most mechanics used their hands. He used his mind, too, writing code, building small security programs that could track digital signatures and detect cyber threats. It started as a hobby, a way to keep his brain sharp after leaving the Army Signals Corps years ago. But one night, that hobby changed everything. Andre found a strange data packet running through his local network, something that didn't belong. He followed the digital trail out of curiosity, and what he discovered was a cyber breach targeting state government servers. He reported it anonymously. The next week, men in dark suits showed up at his shop, asking for the person behind the code. That was the day his quiet life collided with the world of intelligence work again. The meeting continued, but Andre's thoughts lingered on that memory. He had never sought attention, never wanted recognition. He'd only wanted to do the right thing, to use his gift to protect people who'd never know his name. Across the table, Deputy Director Harris, a tall, silver-haired woman with sharp eyes, spoke with quiet authority. Agent Miles, your algorithms have already prevented 3 major security incidents this quarter. Washington is impressed. Andre nodded humbly. Just doing my job, ma'am. But inside, he still felt like the man standing in that lobby downstairs, the one people looked at twice, wondering if he belonged. He thought about the receptionist, the guards, the stares. He was used to it. Years of being underestimated had taught him patience, not pride. When the meeting adjourned, Andre stepped outside into the fading Atlanta sunlight. The city hummed, cars, street vendors, laughter from the nearby park. He loosened his tie and took a slow breath. That's when he heard a voice behind him. "Excuse me, sir?" He turned. It was Kendra, the same receptionist from earlier, still in her uniform, her eyes full of guilt. I just wanted to apologize," she stammered. "For earlier. I didn't know who you were." Andre smiled faintly. "That's all right," he said. "You were just doing your job." She looked down. "Still. I shouldn't have assumed." He nodded slowly, choosing his words. "People assume a lot in this world. What matters is what we do once we know better." Kendra exhaled, her shoulders easing a little. "You're not like most people that come through here." "Maybe that's a good thing," Andre said, and walked toward his car. As he drove away, the last light of day glinted off his rearview mirror, and for a moment, he saw not the reflection of a federal agent, but the quiet mechanic he used to be. The man no one saw coming. Long before Andre Miles walked into the Magnolia Grand Hotel in a tailored suit, before people stood when he entered a room, he was just a boy from Clayton County, Georgia, who learned early that the world didn't expect much from him. His mother, Lorraine Miles, worked double shifts at a nursing home. His father, a Vietnam veteran, passed away when Andre was 12, leaving behind a toolbox, a rusted pickup truck, and a lifetime of unspoken lessons. Andre grew up fixing things. Radios. Bikes. Old televisions. The kind of repairs nobody thought worth the trouble, but he fixed them anyway. He said there was something sacred about taking something broken and making it work again. That belief would shape the rest of his life. At 18, Andre enlisted. Not out of patriotism, but out of purpose. He needed structure. A mission. He was assigned to the U.S. Army Signal Corps, where he found his second home, not with weapons, but with machines. While others saw cables and code, Andre saw language, signals that spoke truth in silence. He earned a quiet reputation for solving problems no one else could. When a field unit in Afghanistan lost communications during a blackout, Andre patched it manually with salvaged parts and a laptop running code he wrote himself. His commanding officer said, "Miles doesn't talk much, but when he does, listen." But after 12 years of service, and more than his share of moral battles, Andre decided to leave. The uniform gave him honor, but not peace. He wanted to live a life where he could serve without being seen as just another soldier in the system. So, he came home. Back to Georgia. Back to that small auto shop his father once ran. Running Miles' auto repair wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Andre fixed cars during the day and tinkered with code at night. He stayed away from crowds, didn't post on social media, and avoided attention. To most people, he was that quiet mechanic on the corner. But behind that shop's steel door, Andre built something revolutionary, a program he called Aegis, named after the mythic shield of protection. It wasn't meant to make him rich. It was meant to make people safe. Aegis could detect security breaches before they happened, reading patterns, tracking anomalies, and learning from them. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. One night, Andre detected unusual activity, a data trail leading back to a state-level system. He ran diagnostics twice before realizing what he had stumbled upon, an active infiltration attempt targeting state election servers. He didn't know who was behind it. But he knew what it meant if he stayed silent. So, using an old contact from his army days, he sent the code anonymously to the state's cybersecurity unit. Within days, the breach was stopped, quietly. No press, no headlines. Andre went back to work like nothing happened. Until two black SUVs pulled up in front of his shop one rainy Thursday morning. A man and a woman stepped out, wearing dark suits and calm faces. "Mr. Miles," the man asked. Andre wiped his hands on a rag and nodded. "That's me." The woman extended a card. "Department of Homeland Security. We'd like to talk." He thought it was a mistake at first. He wasn't a hacker or an agent, just a mechanic. But when they showed him the printouts, code strings identical to his own, his world shifted. The woman smiled slightly. "We traced the signature. You wrote this." Andre's heart pounded. "I just wanted to help." "And you did," the agent said. "But what you built, it's bigger than you think. We could use someone like you." That conversation became the beginning of a new chapter. A year later, Andre Miles, the quiet mechanic from the South Side, became a cybersecurity consultant for Homeland Strategic Intelligence. And now, standing in that luxury hotel where they'd once tried to remove him, he realized something powerful. All those years of being underestimated had prepared him for this exact moment. Later that evening, as he sat alone in his apartment overlooking downtown Atlanta, Andre opened his laptop. The city lights flickered against the window, painting the room gold. He read an email from the deputy director. "You've been cleared for next week's intelligence briefing in D.C. Bring your full report on Aegis." He stared at the screen for a long time before replying with two simple words, "Yes, ma'am." He closed the laptop and leaned back, smiling faintly. He wasn't chasing recognition. He never was. But for the first time in his life, Andre didn't feel invisible. He felt seen, not for how he looked, but for what he'd done. 2 weeks later, the skies over Washington, D.C. were heavy with gray clouds when Andre Miles stepped out of a black SUV in front of the Federal Security Operations Center. He was here for a classified briefing, one that could determine the nation's next steps in cyber defense. As usual, he arrived early. And as usual, people looked twice. He walked through the marble lobby, his polished shoes echoing softly. Security scanners beeped and uniformed guards moved briskly, but Andre's presence drew quiet stares. Not because they knew who he was, but because they didn't think he belonged here either. He passed through the first checkpoint, badge clipped neatly to his suit jacket, Andre Miles, Federal Cyber Operations/Special Project Aegis. A few new guards glanced at the ID, then at him. One raised an eyebrow, probably remembering his own assumptions when Andre had shown up at the hotel weeks earlier. He was used to it by now, but it still stung. The briefing took place in a room cold enough to hang meat. Projectors buzzed softly, displaying maps and coded data across the walls. The air smelled of coffee and nerves. Deputy Director Harris was there, flanked by 2 senior analysts and a handful of military advisors. Andre took his seat at the end of the long glass table. "Agent Miles," Harris began, "you've requested this session to discuss an urgent detection from Project Aegis?" "Yes, ma'am," Andre replied. His voice calm, measured. "It's not just a false positive. Aegis has identified a signal pattern that matches pre-attack protocols from an old threat actor we believed was neutralized. Who? One of the analysts asked. Andre clicked a key, and the projector displayed lines of code across the screen, red markers tracing through multiple IP routes, ending in a city no one expected. St. Louis, he said. A local hotel network was breached 2 days ago. The same signature that targeted federal servers 3 years back. The room fell silent. Are you certain? Harris asked. Andre nodded. It's the same pattern. If I'm right, they're testing access through private networks before going national. The others exchanged uneasy glances. Some didn't believe him. Some thought he was chasing ghosts. But Harris watched him closely, and she saw something in his eyes. Proceed quietly, she said. Keep this between us until we confirm. Andre nodded. He'd been here before, having to prove himself to people who doubted him. But this time, the stakes were far higher. 2 days later, Andre was back in a hotel lobby. But not as a guest. He was on a mission. The Pinnacle Plaza Hotel, an upscale venue in downtown St. Louis, had unknowingly become the testing ground for the breach. The attackers were using its public Wi-Fi to funnel encrypted traffic under a dummy corporate network. Andre checked in under a cover name, Anthony Miles, IT consultant. He carried nothing but a slim laptop, a set of encrypted drives, and that same calm composure that made people underestimate him. Late that night, he sat in the dim light of his room, laptop open, the Aegis system running in stealth mode. Streams of data flowed across his screen like rainfall. Then, a flash of red. Connection detected. Location, hotel server room, basement level. Andre's pulse quickened. He grabbed his ID and laptop and headed for the elevator. When the doors opened, a security guard intercepted him. Sir, you can't be down here. This floor's restricted. Andre met his eyes. I'm with Federal Cyber Operations. There's a breach in your system. The guard frowned. You got proof of that? Andre reached into his jacket, pulling out his badge, the same one that had once stopped a different guard mid-step. The man scanned it, froze, and straightened immediately. Go ahead, sir. Sorry about that. Andre nodded and moved past him, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Inside the server room, the hum of machines filled the air. Andre plugged his drive in, and watched as the Aegis interface locked onto the source. Someone was in the network, right now, live and operating. He could see their data trace, masked, bouncing between nodes, but the pattern was distinct. It wasn't just any hacker. It was the same group from years ago. And they weren't testing the system. They were already inside. Andre worked fast, typing commands in rapid succession, sweat beading on his forehead. The breach spread like fire. Aegis countered, but the attackers were skilled, anticipating his every move. He stayed calm. His breathing steady. He rerouted power, isolated the compromised subnet, and activated the Aegis quarantine system. Within minutes, the red signals began to fade. One by one, the intrusion points collapsed, until the final connection blinked out. Andre leaned back, exhausted but steady. He'd stopped it, alone, in silence, just like before. A minute later, Harris's voice came through his encrypted line. Miles, we've got confirmation from DC, your data's accurate. You just shut down a breach attempt that could have reached federal systems. Andre exhaled slowly. Just doing my job, ma'am. You did more than that, Harris replied. You just saved us another crisis. Washington owes you again. That night, as Andre packed his things to leave, he paused at the lobby once more. The same guard who'd stopped him earlier nodded respectfully. Good night, sir, he said. Andre smiled faintly. Good night. He walked out into the cool St. Louis air, the city lights shimmering off wet pavement. He'd been mistaken for a trespasser twice, once in Atlanta, now here, but he no longer felt bitter about it. He knew who he was. And now, finally, so did they. The morning after the St. Louis incident, the sky was washed in gold. Andre Miles sat in a quiet cafe near the hotel, sipping black coffee and watching traffic slide past the window. His phone buzzed, an encrypted message from Deputy Director Harris. "We're sending a statement to the press. They're calling you the invisible agent." He sighed, setting the phone down. He hadn't done any of it for headlines. He'd done it because he could, because he should. Still, he knew what this meant. For the first time, the world would know his name. And that scared him more than any cyber threat ever could. By noon, major outlets were running it. Local agent prevents major federal breach, operated alone using proprietary software. Ex-Army engineer saves national infrastructure from cyber attack. The name Andre Miles trended across the federal press networks, and a photo of him, standing beside Deputy Director Harris, hands in pockets, wearing his quiet half-smile, began circulating online. At the Magnolia Grand Hotel in Atlanta, where it all began, staff watched the story on the lobby TV. Kendra, the receptionist who'd once doubted him, froze mid-step. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the man I told security to remove." The guards looked at each other in disbelief. One of them muttered, "Guess we owe him more than an apology." Kendra watched the screen longer than she meant to. There was something humbling about it, how someone so unassuming could carry such quiet power. A week later, Andre was invited to Washington for a private commendation ceremony. He didn't want the spotlight, but Harris insisted. The room was filled with high-ranking officials, all of them standing as he walked in. Harris took the podium. In a world obsessed with visibility, it takes rare strength to serve silently. Agent Andre Miles has done so with brilliance, integrity, and humility. Today, we recognize that courage. Applause filled the room. Andre stood awkwardly, his posture straight, eyes steady. He accepted the plaque quietly, speaking only when the crowd hushed. "Ma'am," he began, "I don't have much to say, except this. When people look at you and think you don't belong, remember, you don't have to prove them wrong by shouting. Sometimes the loudest statement is what you do when no one's watching." The room went silent for a long moment, then rose in another wave of applause. Harris smiled, proud, but not surprised. Back home in Georgia, Andre parked his car outside the old Miles Auto Repair. The sign was faded, but it still stood, just like him. Inside, dust danced in the sunbeams that cut through the windows. The same tools his father once used were still hanging neatly on the wall. He walked over, brushed a thin layer of dust off the workbench, and smiled faintly. He'd seen the world, from battlefields to boardrooms, but somehow, this small, oil-stained garage still felt like home. A young boy from the neighborhood poked his head in through the open door. "Hey, mister," the kid said shyly, "my bike chain's stuck. You fix things, right?" Andre chuckled softly. "Yeah, kid. That's what I do." He grabbed a wrench, knelt beside the boy's bike, and got to work. The same way he always had. That evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Andre sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. He looked at the quiet street, the kids playing, the world turning like nothing had changed. He smiled. Because deep down, he knew that was the point. The world didn't need to know how many times he'd been doubted, or how many rooms he'd been told he didn't belong in. What mattered was that he showed up anyway. And in doing so, he reminded everyone, from hotel guards to government halls, that true worth isn't announced. It's revealed. If this story moved you, remember, there are countless people like Andre out there, quiet, overlooked, and underestimated, yet doing the kind of work that keeps the world standing. Share this story to remind someone that humility isn't weakness, it's power in disguise. Like, comment, and subscribe to Buchi Grind for more emotional, real-life inspired stories that keep you watching. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Because sometimes, the greatest stories are the ones that walk right past you, and you never even notice.